I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude that I was able to heal myself. I just feel so much better than I have my whole life. Hello. So this is a topic that is new to my channel, but I just felt like I had to share these books with you because they truly changed my life. So therapy definitely helped too, but I really think that the bulk of my healing was because of these books. Let me rewind a little bit. So back in 2018, I sought treatment for ADHD after reading some symptoms online and thinking that is me. And I just had gotten to a point, like a breaking point, where it was affecting me, my everyday life, and I felt like I couldn't cope anymore, and I needed help. But my therapist, unfortunately, I felt like didn't really help me, my first therapist. I was really searching for tools to help myself kind of retrain my brain and really get down to the root of why I was so upset and sad all the time and anxious. Because, on paper, I had a really good life. I have a really good life. I felt so fortunate, and at the same time, I just felt like there was something wrong and something off with me, and I felt guilty because it's like I've got all this stuff, and I'm so fortunate, and I'm still unhappy. I had to kind of get over that feeling first of all too, which was just guilty and shame about seeking help because I just felt like a spoiled brat. But once I finally did, I was able to start kind of working on my mental state, and I ended up switching therapists and psychiatrists just because I did not like the first place I went to. And that was a really good decision. So also I would say, if you're not happy originally with, who you go to, try somebody else. They're people too. You might not mesh. So it was a few months into therapy when I first found these books, and I was really into TED Talks at the time. I don't remember if it was Brene Brown herself or someone else that, was kind of a similar message, but someone in the comments said, hey, if you enjoyed this, then check out The Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown. And so I went on Audible, and this is not sponsored, but I went on Audible and I downloaded The Power of Vulnerability. So the gist of the book is that when we feel fear, shame, and uncertainty, that basically closes us off to authenticity and joy and creativity, living in the moment. So when we learn to recognize when we're feeling that shame and when we're having, as she calls them, little fear, shame gremlins, when those start to kind of speak up inside of you, you can be like, nope, not today, Satan. Basically, you can learn to kind of identify your gremlins, and then you can quiet them down so that you're able to live more authentically and have a better life. I listened to that book, and I remember just crying in my car because I felt so seen. Okay, finally, someone is talking about how I feel, and I'm not just spoiled or a brat. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just, I've trained myself to think in a certain way, which isn't good. But now that I know that this is a thing, I can work on it. I can help myself. This book was exactly what I needed at the time. And I have struggled a lot in my life with just being a perfectionist and being really harsh with myself and hard on myself. And I think it's important to hold yourself accountable for things and positive, healthy striving for goals and whatnot. But there is definitely a dark side to that kind of mentality, which is where it gets way too critical and harsh. And that was me. And I just felt like the harder I tried to do things, the worse I felt, because I just would overwhelm myself, and then I wouldn't accomplish things, and I'd feel worse. And it's just kind of a vicious cycle. If you don't listen to any of the other audiobooks on this list, this one is probably the number one I would recommend. It's just so good. So the next one I listened to is called The Courage to Be Disliked by Fumitake Kota and Ichiro Kishimi. And it was translated from Japanese, so there are some phrases in it that are they don't quite translate well, I think, from Japanese. It's a little odd at times, some of the phrasing and the words that they use, but the message still checks out. But basically, it's about this young man and an older philosopher, gentleman, kind of a mentor-mentee kind of situation. But it's actually written in sort of a conversational kind of pattern. Basically, the young man starts out by going to this older man's house, and he is so cynical and just really hates people in general and just so negative. You know, he's basically like, I'm gonna convince you why people are bad and you're wrong about all this stuff. And the older gentleman's just like, okay, you can try to convince me and, you know, I'll basically say why you're wrong. The problem is with you and not the other people. You know, so as you might imagine, the book is called The Courage to Be Disliked, and basically that is what it is in a nutshell. So by constantly seeking validation and acceptance from other people, you put yourself in this box to where if you don't perform and you don't feel like you're liked, then you in turn have negative feelings towards those people. And I can relate a lot to the younger man, especially when I was younger. I really, really hated people. And, you know, I think that goes back to my childhood, which, you know, my dad is in the military, so I moved around a lot as a kid, and I was really shy. And so we would move to a new place, and I would be shy, and most of the kids in the places I lived were not especially welcoming to the new kid. I took that as they weren't interested in me, and I didn't make an effort to make friends because I was shy. And so then it was this sort of self-perpetuating cycle of I thought they didn't like me, and so then I would act accordingly, and then they really wouldn't like me, and so then I would just be validated in my assumptions about them. And it wasn't really fair to them or myself to be like that. But, you know, I was shy and I didn't have the skills to change that. But now looking back on it, I can see more clearly what happened, and, you know, it is what it is. I've made peace with it. But this book just really helped bring clarity to that kind of mindset of like, people suck. Yeah, sure, there are some people that suck, but what you put out into the world comes back to you. You know, it's reflected back to you. If you're negative towards people, and if you have this feeling of like, ugh, people are going to pick up on that, even if you think it's hidden. And the other thing about this one I really liked was that, you know, the key to happiness is being okay with being disliked, and also doing things for the betterment of society as a whole, doing good things for people with no expectation in return. This book really helped change my thinking, so it was very influential to me too. Highly recommend. So after The Courage to Be Disliked, I actually went on to a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And this one was more of kind of a scientific sort of thing, and more straightforward about identifying habits and triggers and changing them, essentially. And I realized a lot of my problems with my mental kind of processes were that they were habits. You know, my negative thoughts and feelings were habits, and I wanted to change that. So this book explains that the key to changing habits is to start small, and you have to be able to identify the habit loop. So it goes cue, craving, response, and reward. And that's all typically subconscious unless you realize that you're doing it. So you have to figure out what your cues are so you can replace your response and then get a different reward. Well, let me put it into terms you might understand. So for example, if I buy fabric online when I'm stressed, can't relate. I need to be able to identify, okay, I'm stressed out and I have the urge, I have the craving to buy fabric online. And rather than do that though, I'm going to instead make a Pinterest board called Fabrics I Want to Buy. And then I'm going to take that fabric and I'm going to pin that to my board. So the new habit loop is the cue is I'm being stressed out and the craving is I want to buy fabric, but the response is that I pin it to my board, and the reward is the feeling that I get when I see it on the board and I've pinned it and I've kind of scratched that itch, basically. So you can also do that with negative thought patterns, and the key is just awareness and being diligent with observing your own thoughts and feelings, really. So that one was a really good one too. And also for kind of mental stuff, it's also just good for habits in general. I have been able to create some better habits. I'm not 100% successful, but I mean, I make the bed like a lot more than I ever used to. So anyway, highly recommend that book too. So the next book is called Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach. So this book was really about what else? Radical acceptance of yourself, meaning your flaws and your negative attributes and even your negative thoughts and feelings, and just accepting that everything isn't going to be great all the time, and you're human and you don't have to be perfect, basically. I feel like that's something that, I mean, it's natural to want to avoid pain and suffering, right? Sometimes, though, that avoidance of the pain and suffering ends up making it way worse. I guess really the main message of this one was having compassion for yourself and your flaws and not being so harsh and judging yourself, and really just sitting with and accepting that there are going to be negative things, thoughts, feelings, just behaviors in your life. And when you can accept them, then you can actually start to feel relief and you can actually work on them after you accept them. So like for me, I had put this pressure on myself to start my YouTube channel and to be somebody, you know, even before I did YouTube, I was really pressuring myself to be a well-known and respected graphic designer. All that did was make me feel overwhelmed and like I wasn't good enough. Basically, I just could not outrun my self-doubt and my insecurity about my skills. And I was putting too much pressure on myself to be excellent. Like I said, there's healthy striving and then there's unhealthy obsessing and critique. It was only once I accepted that I could just be normal and I didn't have to be like special, as silly as that sounds, I could just be a nobody. Once I was able to accept that, I was able to get out of my own way in terms of reaching my goals and growing my audience and making awesome projects. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, but you basically have to just accept yourself and not feel the need to be so special. This one also, when I was doing the guided meditations, I do remember crying too. Just, it was so, felt like I was finally getting through to my core, kind of, and getting through all of the clouds of self-doubt and negativity and just reconnecting with my soul in a way. Yeah, so I really recommend this book too. The last book that I would extremely highly recommend is called Take Control of Your Life by Mel Robbins. So this one kind of has more of a Brene Brown kind of vibe too. And it's actually not so much a book as it is almost more like a podcast. It's basically some coaching sessions between Mel Robbins and some, normal everyday people who have different struggles. Like one person is a, struggling perfectionist, and another one just feels stuck, like he doesn't know where to go, and he kind of like overthinks things. I think the genius of this book was that Mel does such a good job of explaining and getting the people to see how the physical body works with the mind to kind of perpetuate these negative feelings and this feeling of stuck and not wanting to take risks, basically holding ourselves back. And the way she does it is by asking the people to describe how they feel when they start thinking about whatever it is that they want to do. So, for example, if I am starting my YouTube channel and I have massive perfectionism problems, when I start to think about doing a YouTube channel and having people see my videos that aren't perfect, and, I'm not a professional, who would watch my videos? Who cares about what I have to say? I'm awkward in front of the camera, blah, blah, blah. When I start to think about all that stuff, I get this pit in my stomach and my throat kind of starts to tighten up and I get a dry mouth. So she asks the people to identify how they feel, and then she says, okay, now think back to when you were a little kid and try to remember the earliest time that you felt that same feeling of, the stomach clenching and the throat tightening up and the mouth getting dry. Make that connection. What was happening in that moment? Basically what she's trying to say is that when we feel attacked or threatened in any way, even if it's not physical, but if our body is perceiving a threat, our central nervous system is activated, and then our mind says, oh, abort, stop whatever you're doing. And that could be by saying, oh, I can't do a YouTube channel. I can't do it. It's not for me. But what you can do is learn how to work through that and tell yourself, okay, I'm feeling these feelings. I still want to do this and I can work through them. And so all these people were able to, all the people in the book were able to work through their fears and retrain themselves and were able to accomplish whatever it was that they wanted to accomplish. Some of us maybe were able to start our YouTube channel and post videos that were really not perfect. And I look back on those videos sometimes and I cringe a little bit, but you know what? I'm so proud of those videos because basically I'm getting emotional right now because I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude that I was able to heal myself with the help of these books and, therapy. And also the holistic psychologist on Instagram is huge for my healing journey. But I just feel so much better than I have my whole life. Of course, I still have days where I kind of get down, but I know that it's temporary. And I can now recognize these, internalized beliefs that I had about myself. I mean, lies, really. When they pop up, I'm able to squash them or rationalize and say, okay, no, I know that that's an ego story I've kind of created for myself, and I'm not going to buy into that. And just because I have a thought does not mean it is reality. I just want to share that with people because I think that we all have the ability to heal ourselves. I think it's an amazing thing to be able to help get to the root of what it is that's making you feel anxious when you talk to people, or when you think about putting yourself out there, or when you think about, sewing a new project and cutting it out and you're just terrified and fear because you think you're going to mess it up, It's really, really powerful to be able to call yourself out when you are reinforcing these negative beliefs. Call yourself out in a loving way. This is obviously a very different video than I normally do, but that's it. I really hope that you found some value in it, and I will see you next time. And thank you so much for watching. Mwah. Bye.